Hey everyone, how's it going? Azren the Language Nerd here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds. As you know, we are a business that runs classes, group and private classes for a wide variety of foreign languages, and welcome to this course on how to learn another language. I don't really have much that I'd like to say to kick this video off, and so let's dive right into the video. Let me share my screen. We're going to take up where we left off last time. Okay. If all goes well today, we should be able to wrap up level one, the level one part of this curriculum today. We have one or one and a half things remaining, and I believe ambitiously I can wrap it up in this video. If not, it might take one more short video. So today we're going to talk about asking questions, and we're going to talk about how to do this. This is going to transition really well into level two, because level two is starting to build the foundations of having conversations. Level one is just building some of the initial foundations of the language, and it's not the most conversational yet. I mean, with your conversation partner, your language buddy, or your tutor, you are going to be talking with them, but it's not going to be a conversation. You're mostly asking them lots of questions about the language. At this point, you've been asking things like, what's this? What's that? Very, very simple things to build your vocabulary. So right now you're still in this exploratory phase where you're building the foundations of the language as a whole. A good analogy would be picture yourself as a baby right now. In your mind, you're like 1 year old, maybe 2 years old, because that's how I view language learning. I view it as, I said it previously actually, I don't view it as, if you speak English as your first language, I don't view it as teaching English you how to speak another language. I view it as there's an English you, and now you've given birth to a French you, and the French you has to now learn how to speak French. Okay, and you're a baby. So right now you are barely 2 years old at this point. And so you're not, 2-year-olds don't really have proper conversations, and you're also not having proper conversations. But learning about this next chunk here, which is questions, is going to start moving you in the right direction so you can start to have some conversations once we get more into level two. So let me scroll through here. So as I've written here, knowing how to ask questions is essential. If you cannot, you will never be able to converse fluently with a native speaker. I've written that important note here at the bottom of the screen too, right here, which is that asking questions is reasonably simple in some languages and quite complex in other languages. So you might breeze through this because there's not much to really learn when it comes to asking questions. But if you're learning a language where asking questions is really complicated, well, now maybe you're going to have to spend some more time. So for example, in Gujarati, which is a language I speak, asking questions is not the most complicated thing in the world. It's reasonably straightforward. I suppose if you were going to ask questions formally, there's a bit of a structure that is a bit different, but it's not even then, it's not that hard. In an informal context, questions are super easy. If you go to Spanish, for example, Spanish questions are also super easy. You can ask a lot of questions just by changing your intonation, and it's really quite straightforward. There's not much to it. But on the other hand, asking questions in French has a lot more to it and is not quite as straightforward. So depending on the language you're learning, this may or may not be something that's really easy. Okay. So the first thing you're probably going to have to learn is your question words, your who, what, where, when, why, how, and perhaps you could even throw in how much or how many. You need to learn these words. And what you're ultimately going to have to do at this point, I actually wondered, did I give an activity based on it? No, I don't think I did. No, I didn't. Perhaps I should even add one in now that I'm looking at this. I'll tell it to you in the video, and I'll see if I add something into the workbook after the fact. But let me tell you right now, something you must do for questions, because I haven't put an activity. Once you've learned your question words, you're probably going to have to do a lot of writing practice at this stage, where you write out, let's say, a minimum of 10 different questions. I actually want to say more like 30, really. But I know if I say 30, it might become daunting. So let's say minimum, bare minimum of 10 questions. Okay. Let's say how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 7. Yeah. So let's say basic, I mean, even 10 is not that much. I'm going to say 21 questions because we have 7 different question words here. Let's say 3 questions, which each one of these question words, you're going to write these out. You're going to make them up. You're going to try and think about what kinds of things you can ask. And then you're going to have your tutor or your language partner correct them. Okay. So as a recap, step 1, you have to learn these words. Okay. You can do that by going onto YouTube, onto Google. You can ask your language partner. You can ask your tutor. Those are kind of your main ways you could probably go about learning these words. Step 2, you're going to have to learn how questions are phrased and how questions are structured in the language you're trying to learn. So again, you may have to Google this. You may go into Google, open it up, right? Go into it, type, blah, 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 blah. You're going to type how to form questions in Spanish, how to form questions in Arabic, how to form questions in Russian, how to form questions in Swahili, how to form questions in Hindi, whatever the language is. And you're going to see something, assuming it's a widely spoken language. Or you might have to talk to your tutor or your language partner if you're not able to find much or the videos online don't really make sense to you. Okay. And then you're gonna have to practice writing them and just get used to forming questions. I wouldn't be worried initially. I would not be worried initially about being able to speak with the questions. Like I want you to start on the writing for now. Here's a fun fact that I've noticed when it comes to language learning. If you can write fluently, there's a how do I say this? There's a correlation between writing fluently and speaking fluently. Meaning if you cannot write fluently, there's a good chance you probably can't speak very fluently. Probably. There are exceptions to that because maybe you learned whatever language just by being immersed in speaking and you never learned how to read and write. So there's going to be an exception there because then you might be able to speak, but you don't even know how to read and write because you've never learned it. But assuming you're learning a language as a second language, you started to learn how to read and write from day one, and you started to do that, assuming that's how you went about things, I would say that if you are unable to write very quickly, let's say, like it takes you a long time to think of the words and put them in the right order and form the sentence, well, guess what? It's probably going to take you a long time when you speak. But if you can write reasonably quickly without thinking too much, whatever it is, oh yeah, my name is Azren. If you can write that reasonably quickly, when it comes to saying it, you're probably going to have an easier time saying it fluently as well. That's my personal experience. It's not an exact correlation. It's not like you can practice your writing and all of a sudden write really fluently and magically you can speak fluently. You're still going to have to practice the conversation, the speaking, etc. You'll still have to practice it. But a great first step is to be able to get yourself to write things in a reasonably quickly, let's say, and without having to think too hard. So I would do a lot of writing practice with these to get your brain around, okay, how do we form questions? In fact, to be honest, with everything we've talked about, I'm going to say right now that perhaps up until this point, everything we've talked about, maybe put a lot of emphasis on that writing side initially to get yourself used to how to write those things, how to form it. That might be a strategy that works for you. That really might work for you. So, as I've said on this page, for more practice with asking questions, keep following the rest of this course. There are plenty of practice exercises in level 2. So level 2, as I said, is trying to get you much more into actually conversing and having conversations with people. So there's lots of question practice in level 2, lots and lots and lots. I think that's why actually I didn't put a lot of practice exercises here because I thought, okay, level 2 is right around the corner. Maybe we don't need to do a lot of practice exercises. You just need to get the basis of question words. But I think doing some writing practice and writing those questions out is beneficial still and will help you as we transition to level 2. The last thing in level 1 is an activity which I call where is. It could actually fit kind of nicely with asking questions. It could probably even be categorized as the same unit, to be honest. So the way this works is we're going to learn how to ask where something is and describe where something is. That's what you're going to learn in this chapter. It's a pretty useful thing for travelers, to be honest, to ask where something is and to understand what someone says, at least to an extent. Because when you're traveling, you might get lost and you might have to ask someone, hey, where is the bank? Where, or not the bank, but you might say, I'm looking for the Eiffel Tower. Where is it? I'm looking for such and such thing. I can't find it. Where is it? Like you're going to ask a lot of where is. But in order to understand or even have a prayer of a hope of understanding what the other person says back to you, you're going to have to learn what are called prepositions of place. Prepositions of place are describing where something is. Okay, so I've put a list, pretty long list to be honest. Looks like there's, well, 13 here. So 2 pages worth, 13 different prepositions of place that I would recommend you learn either by using Google and YouTube, so literally Googling it, YouTubing it, that's great, or you can just simply ask your tutor or your language partner. This is an important piece of being able to even put sentences together and converse and use the language. I'm going to prioritize a couple of these. Let me get a little marker out so I can prioritize some. I would say let's say the least important ones, I'm not necessarily, well, no, it's okay. Actually, never mind. I was going to say there's a couple that are less important, but as I'm looking at this now, maybe they're all equally important. Yeah, there's 13. I mean, maybe you can try learning them all. Maybe that if there's some of them that are really hard to say in your target language, because sometimes things don't translate perfectly. Maybe there's a word that's kind of hard to translate. Maybe the ones that are really difficult, maybe you leave those aside and you don't worry about the really hard ones. Just learn the easy ones for now. So, for example, in French, in French even, let's see, in French, most of these are pretty straightforward, like dans, sur, à côté de, like à la gauche, etc., près, proche, loin. Yeah, these are not really hard in French. Maybe if your language has some that are hard, then you can maybe skirt around it for the time being and don't stress yourself too much for now. But I would go about learning these. What I would do as you're learning these is just like as I'm asking questions. I believe it's beneficial for you to write a lot, and I mean, depending on depending on if you can actually sit down and write lots of sentences, and that's something you can do to learn. Myself, I'm not really like that, so I couldn't picture myself sitting down and writing 32 sentences. Not really. Like it's hard for me to do that. I would much rather book a time with a speaking partner or a tutor and do these orally and write them in the middle of the class with my tutor and do it with someone. That's me, but you got to know yourself and do what works for you. But I do think it'd be beneficial for you to write 3 to 5 sentences. I've only written one example sentence here, like there's one space. I think 3 to 5 for each one of these would be beneficial. So you learn the word in, right? Then you write, I am in my house, sentence 1. My friend is in a band, sentence 2. Sentence 3 might be, there are lots of pencils and pens in this, what do you call this? It's not a pencil case. Pencil holder. There we go. There's 3 sentences. Then you move on, right? And you do 3 with each one. I think that can be beneficial. I think it'll help a lot of you. I've designed this program for it to be a little bit adaptable. So some of you might choose to just do more speaking practice with this content. There's different ways you can try to learn it, but I think that would be beneficial for the vast majority of you. Okay, and don't forget to have, I think I've done this wrong. I put example sentence. Oh, it's okay, it's fine, yeah, it's okay, cool. And then once you've done your practice sentences, I think we can do a where is activity, which is a good way to use some of this, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of these prepositions of place and start to get a little bit of practice with questions in a way where you can practice it in a spoken environment. So here's what we're going to do. I didn't put the instructions in the actual workbook. I'm just going to explain it to you orally. So the way it works is, let me stop the screen share so you can see me nice and big. Okay. So I'm in this office right now, okay? And there's lots and lots of stuff around me. Assuming you have an online course with someone, that let's assume it's online for the time being, and you have a speaking partner who lives in a different country and you're connecting on Zoom, for instance. What you're going to do is they're going to see all sorts of stuff around you. They're going to have a bunch of stuff around them. And they're going to ask you like, hey, Azren, where is your laptop monitor? Okay. And then you're going to describe it. Oh, yeah, my laptop monitor, it's on the table and beside the speakers and behind this glass of water. And you're going to try and describe where this is with as much detail as you can. It's going to be really challenging, by the way. It's not going to be easy, but you're going to do that, right? And you're trying to describe it, and you'll do that with lots and lots of things that your tutor asks you about or your language partner asks you about. Like they're going to ask you all sorts of questions. Where is this? Where are those crystals? So it's going to be a great way for you to practice a lot of the vocabulary you learned nice and early in level 1. The household items, you have to practice those, and you have to practice forming sentences, right? And you'll get to practice all these prepositions of place, describing where things are. It's going to make a lot of strong connections in your brain to the language. And then you'll ask your language partner or your tutor, like, where is, and you'll look at their room, like what's in their background. And you'll ask them where things are there too. And they're going to describe it to you, and you're going to listen. That's going to practice your listening comprehension and give you additional examples of how you would phrase and describe where something is, because then you'll have a real life example of how to do it from your tutor / speaking partner. This is going to take time. This asking question unit and the where is activity and these prepositions, this is not going to come overnight. It's funny because this whole level 1 has taken, if you've just watched all the videos, I mean, it's probably taken what, like a couple of hours of your time, 2 hours, an hour and a half, something like that, right? But it's going to take you way more than that to actually complete all the different tasks in this in level 1 here. There's one more task in level 1 that this task occurs in every single level. Let's share my screen again. Okay, let's scroll down. And here we go. It's the last page of the workbook, the last page. So if you're purchasing these workbooks, by the way, they're available for purchase on my website, azrenthelanguagenerd.com/free course. That is spelled AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/free course, if that's not where you're watching this in the first place. So now it's time to do a comprehensive review. If you remember, if we go back here, remember, I said one of the 5 major types of learning activities is doing a revisit and review. And so I've built that into this program so that you don't have to remember it as much. You can just do it at the end of each level. I would recommend doing it sooner than the end of each level, possibly, depending on how long it takes you to complete a level. But minimally, if I put it in once per level, at least it makes you do it once and it's better than nothing. So this is where you do a comprehensive review. You're going to go through every single page in your workbook, or if you didn't purchase a workbook and you just have a notebook or your laptop or whatever you used, go through all your notes. First, you're going to reread them slowly, carefully. Reread them, refresh your memory. Okay. Then you're going to quiz yourself or have someone quiz you on the contents of your notes. You can skip by anything you know really well. If you know it like super cold, if you know it just as well as your first language, maybe you don't need to review it. Like I don't need to review in Japanese how to ask, what's this? I've done that so many times now. I know it just as well as I know English. Like I know it cold. So I don't ever need to review that. I just know it already, right? But there's lots of stuff I don't remember fully. Like I don't fully remember all the different parts. Like in this room, I've learned how to say everything in this room. I don't really remember a lot of it. Like I think this is like, I forget how to say chair. It's like, I know it. If I heard it, I would know it, but I can't remember it now. Even like a phone, I think it's ketai. Anyway, regardless, I don't fully remember. So this would be something I would review like, oh yeah, right. I have to quiz myself. I'd probably fail the quiz when I quiz myself, right? So I'm going to quiz myself once or twice on some of the contents. It'll help me remember. And then you're going to revisit one or two difficult concepts that you skipped or didn't really understand. So a good example would be for myself in Japanese. I remember I learned something that came up while I was while I was taking my lessons. I learned how to talk about likes, like to say I like. I think it was I like, I can, and I want. I think those are three things I ended up covering because it came up in conversation. It's not part of this program. I was trying to follow this program, but it came up and I was really curious. So I just asked, which is something I recommend you do, by the way. You don't have to follow this to the letter. Remember, in this level 1 here, if we just go back up, or actually it's further down. Remember, it's okay to bounce around. You got to be flexible, right? So you try and follow the curriculum, but sometimes you might get off track, and that's totally fine. So I got off track a little bit, and I was asking about wants, likes, and needs, or something like that. I think it's wants, likes, and things I can do. I think those are the three I picked. Regardless, it came up in conversation. So, and I was asking, and like I learned about it, and I remember studying it. But like, if you ask me now, I remember at the time I was even thinking like it wasn't easy. Like I had a hard time grasping my mind around it. So I kind of got it, but then I let it go. So that would be this would be a great time for me to revisit that and be like, okay, wait, how did that work again? Let me try learning that again. Because remember, language learning is like growing a plant. So you might have tried to learn something 2 months ago and you kind of got it, but then you moved on, but your brain didn't fully understand. So you've got to now go back and water that again, give that plant water again. So maybe you learn negation, right? I'm not a doctor. I am a lawyer, but I'm not this. Like maybe you learned how to do that and you kind of got it, but it didn't fully sink in. Well, this is a great time to go back and water your negation plant, right? Water that part of your farm once again. Give it some more water, give it some more attention, and hopefully it grows a little bit more. So it's a great time to go back and do that chunk there. So this step takes probably, it'll take some time as well. This is not a fast step. This entire program is not fast because I don't believe learning a language to a high degree of fluency. I don't believe that's a fast process. I do think it takes some time and you've got to build. It's like having a baby, and for a baby to properly grow up, it needs a lot of attention, a lot of time and energy, and this is what you're doing right now. You're growing the baby in your mind. You're growing one. So growing one? No, you're raising one, not growing one. You're raising a baby in your mind here. So that takes us to the end of level 1. Congratulations, you've made it. Next time, we're going to jump into level 2. So if you're on my website here, azrenthelanguagenerd.com/free course, simply look one row down. You're going to see level 2. Open that up. You're going to see all the videos for it. Click, and off you go. Anything else I want to say today? I suppose one last thing. If you want some assistance on your language learning journey and you want to actually work with myself or someone on my team to learn the language you're trying to learn, you can go to azrenthelanguagenerd.com/classes. That is AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/classes. And you can look at our rates, look at the services we offer, and there's probably something there that can help you and expedite the process of learning another language, if that interests you. Okay, have a good rest of your day. I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Not sure why I did this, but it's like going to shake your hand or something. Who knows? Have a great day. See you later.